Garden of Earthly Blights. This is the second part of our episode on the relationship between art and AI technology. I'm Louisa, your host for this episode, and in this recording, I'll be in conversation with Tony, brilliant creator of this podcast, Reese, our wonderful co-host, and Esther Moa, PhD candidate in computer science and incredible first guest. Head to part 1 for a proper introduction to us and to this topic as we go through the basics of how AI image generators work and introduce key debates about technology and creativity. In this part of our conversation, we continue along these lines but get a bit more into ethics and debate how far AI tech can and should go. We hope these questions will be thought-provoking to you as well, so let us know your thoughts on @BlightedGarden on Instagram, where we can expand this dialogue. Enjoy! One of the key questions I think I wanted to ask in the interest of disenchanting AI is the term artificial intelligence an accurate one to describe machine learning as it's being used now in the image generators we've been discussing? Or would it only be applicable to like a hypothetical future AI that can perform our cognitive tasks?
Yeah, I think the term artificial intelligence is the right term because from like a machine learning point of view, we have 3 types of learning, major learning, when it comes to like trying to break down what machine learning entails. One, it's known as a supervised learning. A supervised learning is where I have my model and then I'm training it based on my data and the labels. Yeah, so I have photos of cats and a label of cats, and I tell my model to learn that every feature you learn in this category, it's a cat, and maybe ask it. So after training it with like gazillions of images, how well do you predict with a new image of cat that you've never seen? Yeah, so you use the weights that we were talking about earlier on to sort of like now probabilistically determine how much of a cat is that image. Yeah, so if it's like 99%, obviously it's a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you'll have images of tigers and lions being classified as cats as well.
Yeah.
And then now you're like, I thought this was a lion. So it's either the wrong image in the wrong category, or the wrong category in the wrong image. Yeah, vis-a-vis. Yeah. So so it involves like a lot of one, you have to be very very good with your labels, because it will only learn it's like learning this is hand and this is maybe right hand or something. So if you bring in like a left hand, it will always give you like issues. Yeah. So that's supervised learning, where you basically feed your model with images and their labels, and you're basically trying to figure out what are the right weights for me, so that when I have like a new image, I correctly classify it. And then we have an unsupervised learning, which is where now AI is trying to head, because here you don't have any labels. It's basically your model trying to learn what this thing is all about. So it will either categorize it with you'll end up like with categories of similar items together, and that's where like the cognitive aspect of AI and something known as artificial general intelligence comes in, where now you have to sort of like mimic how the brain works, because the brain doesn't really need labels. You just need to explore your environment and then learn the labels much later. Yeah. So the same way kids learn, the same way you learn. You've only been taught that this is a glass, while if you close your eyes and you just touch it, you know that, oh, this is an object, but the name of this object is a class. So that's the unsupervised learning way. And that's where now AI is heading in terms of, from a general intelligence point of view, can we have algorithms that, learn in a forward way, instead of always using how well you perform to sort of like adjust the weights, but you sort of like adjust the weights as you go, yeah, because that information is stored in like the weights again, stored in weights, and you sort of like adjust as you move up the hierarchy, yeah. So that's the unsupervised way. And then now we have a reinforcement learning type of way, which is where now the robotics come into play, yeah. And for this, you sort of like have these agents. We call them like software agents, and I'd say consider like a game where you train your game to learn how to play chess, yeah. So you've built an environment for it, and you're like, please go into that environment and learn your way, yeah. But if you do something correctly, I'm going to give you a reward, yeah. So
Wow.
That's the reinforcement learning way. And the agent now has to learn, and this is how they trained the AlphaGo. If you check the documentation, this is how they trained machines to even perform better than humans in playing chess and all that. So you build the chess environment, and you ask your agent, I want you to learn even from the way Esther is playing, yeah. So if she makes a certain move and it's correct, she's rewarded. So if you make a certain move and it's wrong, you're punished. So the agent has this whole agenda of exploration and exploitation. So you explore, but if you get an opportunity to exploit, especially the good rewards, you maximize on it, yeah. And that's how gaming and all these games that perform better, I'd say like things like betting, because there's like a lot of reinforcement learning in betting and all that. So it even becomes very hard for humans to beat some of these agents, yeah. And those are the three forms of learning. Can we say artificial intelligence is artificial? It's very artificial because the whole human aspect of what do you perceive your realities to be is still very like an unexploited area of cognitive AI, where perception is very personal. Your realities are very personal. The way you understand stuff, the way I understand stuff. But then the whole essence of AI is to generalize some of these things. And I really hope that we'll get to a place where AI is very personal, because at the moment it's very general. But from like a supervised learning point of view, it's performing very well in terms of you've given it examples, and I just want you to learn these parameters, yeah. So where it can automate some of that stuff, it's exploiting that. Where it can being used as a commercial product, people are using that. And I think we've seen even in our devices, in like the way we do stuff just from a digital point of view. The supervised way works really well, but of course from reinforcement learning and unsupervised way, we still have a long way to go. So yeah,
It's kind of a safety in a way, because it doesn't let the AI escape from us. If it always has to have the supervision, then we can track what it's doing, and
Exactly.
How would it become more personalized, like you say? What kind of,
I mean,
is there any data that translates subject creativity?
I mean, building a conscious system which is super personal. I think it's hard because even us as human beings, we, there's no tangible element of things like compassion, things like empathy, and these are the values and the subtle features that make human and AI. Yeah. So, but the more research is being carried out, I think the more we'll start discovering some of these artificial aspects of how an AI agent will be an empath. But then again, you ask yourself, so what are your testing? How would you test some of these things? And what's ethical, what's allowed, what's not allowed? Yeah. So there's this whole cloud on ethics, on the data that we train some of these models on, and I think I overheard, and this is just on a side note, I overheard some discussion, I think a few weeks ago, and someone was saying that, they regret building all these AI products because there's the downside of it, especially, and I think they were talking about Facebook or something. So it was just meant to be a social network for uni students to communicate, but then the whole internet thing has turned it to be, so from an ethical point of view, you're like, there are people who are misusing the whole AI space, and you ask yourself, so from an ethical point of view, where should we stop creating more and more? Because at the end of the day, you're like, how far can we go? Because there's a lot more that can be done that's either detrimental to some people. Yeah. So if I'm surrounded by, I'd say, all these devices, which in a way hear what we talk about, and maybe see, because they have cameras and they have they take your audio, and I think if you're not a victim of like voice leaks, where you speak to someone who has a different dialect, and then the next minute all the adverts that are coming to your phone are like narrowed towards a certain culture or something. So if that AI which is listening to you and maybe monitoring you in one way or the other, and it can't probably prevent suicides, it can't, you ask yourself why, because there's the flip side where if they can hear, if they can see, they would be helpful to some people who are going through difficult times and all that. So how far can we go, and how do we use this AI to sort of like, help people in one way or the other?
Yeah, one of the things when I was attempting to do the visual description of the Bosch work, I was thinking, how do these technologies interact with our feelings? So will the image generator try and create an image that promotes the same feeling in me as the Bosch image of like apparent satisfaction, and then kind of a feeling of witnessing something strange. And then I was thinking as well, in trying to find out what to describe first from the many absurd sites in the work, it would be so interesting to have one of those like vision tracking, eye tracking technologies to see where people's eyes go. But then you could take that further and turn it into how people's eyes react, because we know that our eyes dilate when they are faced with stuff that make us feel a certain way. So maybe that's one way to track the data. But do you think, are there any developments right now in trying to have AI interact with the sensorial and emotional responses to its own creations?
Yeah, I think from an emotional point of view, I've worked on a couple of projects that just describe emotions or sort of like predict what kind of emotion is this, but emotion for me cannot just be a smile and then you're like, oh, they're happy. There's like an innate feeling which AI currently is lacking, and I think you may use like certain keywords to sort of like say, okay, I want to generate something that has happy or sad, kind of teary, and there's really no overlap with what an artist would be feeling at that moment. Maybe it's like a bit of everything. They're going through like something, and it's all these feelings which will be translated to the art. So yes, there is, but the bounds are very hardcore bounds. And I've seen a lot of like eye tracking kind of technologies, but then from a research point of view, you can test it. You can even see from, I think, the Teslas, automotive industry, where you'd have these self-driving cars and all that. So that's part of like the visual eye tracking kind of idea. But then when it comes to now my interaction with the art, I think from a again, the question of ethics, what are you doing with my eyes? With Bitcoin, with all these things and blockchain and all these things
NFTs.
happening, what can you possibly, as an engineer, I can do so much with just your data. And now it becomes like an issue of data protection. You have to protect the data, but then ask yourself, how far do we need to take this AI? I mean, all these applications are good, but then how far can we go? Yeah. So
how far should we go? Not can we? Yeah.
How far should we go?
Interesting how, like, for the first time it seems in history, human beings are like we kind of need to decide where we stop with this.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things. It's like, how high can we jump? How fast can we run? And like,
faster.
Yeah, exactly. And like, but now it's like, okay, like taking the conscious. That's insane.
Yeah.
It's so strange, and it makes you feel like kind of cringe a bit when like I hear people say we're on the precipice of like technology, like the world is about to change. It really makes me cringe, because I'm like, no, the world is not about to change. We decide where it goes. Like, and we do need to decide where it goes. That's something that's important. I don't know. It part of me does feel that way, because I hear new things every day that are just baffling to me and I would never have thought of, and I'm like, wow, that is crazy. But then I just think there are so many people who know so much more, and it's also not crazy to them, and they understand it, and it's about understanding, I think, as well. People don't understand enough about it, at least the regular everyday people don't understand enough about it, so of course they're always going to want to drive it. And again, it goes back to capitalism. They're always going to pay for the next thing that allows them to create an AI profile picture for themselves on Instagram, because I don't know if you guys remember that trend when people were putting themselves through AI and changing the art style, and I had so many friends that changed their profile picture to be that AI art of them. And that was something I think I noticed in your notes that you had about it being trained on other artists' work without their consent. And so it was creating work with styles from other people, and they would sort of like look up and be like, oh, that looks a lot like my stuff, and it's like, well, no, I did it with AI, what do you mean? And it was very unethical, and you have to pay for these things. So this third party company had this AI software to make these photos of people, and people were paying for them, and the artists weren't being sort of like compensated. And so there was a big like woke, like, oh, let's all stop this, like in solidarity with the artists, which is good. I think it should have been done. But again, it kind of links into the point that I wanted to make was with music. So do you know the artist Grimes by any chance? She was in a relationship with Elon Musk, and they have a kids together. She's like
the twins and
yeah.
Whose names are
XA12, that one. So She's super interesting to me, and because of her whole like thing, it seems so right that her and Elon Musk would come together, but everyone hated it because everyone was like, Grimes was like the not up and coming, but like the I think Elon was like the overruling like evil force technology overlord thing, and then Grimes was just like this like vigilante cool girl making music. Like she was like living in an abandoned warehouse in Montreal, and she was like just getting frostbite, but like making her music. And, like people like kind of have that idea of her, which by the way, I think her parents owned that warehouse, and so she wasn't even really like slumming it as much as she made it out to be, or whatever the situation was. But so Grimes has put out this thing, and she's I've got some things here. She said she would be willing to split 50-50 royalties with people who made music using her software that she did. And basically it was allowing people to use her voice and create whatever they wanted with it. And that's not a new thing, being able to change text to sound to mimic the frequency or whatever someone else's voice, that's not new. But the way that she was allowing people to have that be copyright free, she wouldn't go after them for it. And she said there's no rules, no nothing. And then she put out a tweet a few days later being like, just okay, don't make anything racist or like any anti-abortion or like any, just like don't be like this. That's the one rule. Just don't be like weird, essentially. But I wonder like, how is that damaging in a way for someone as high profile as this with all this money and all these resources? She'll be fine. If someone wanted to make loads of money off her voice, she'd be fine. She's got money. But for these unrecognized artists or whoever, you know, it goes back to what I was saying about intellectual property and your art being your own and creative license and all that. That seems to be the issue, because while this is also exciting, having this website where you can change your vocals into Grimes and make whatever. She even did a competition. She said, I want the top 3 best Grimes songs will win. It was like $9,000, $7,000 and $1,000. That was like the prize. And I just think like that's scary to me in a way that it's being taken out of the hands of just like regular people on a guitar singing in a pop bar somewhere. Like, you now have to have access to all of this technology to be able to get somewhere. You have to be able to know how all of this works. And there is still work that goes into it, because the person still has to sing and upload those stems to the software, which then changes it into her voice. So there still has to be work that's done, and there is stuff there, but it's not recognized as their own, because you hear Grimes' voice and you think, oh, that's really cool. Like, it's just this mystified thing. You think that's amazing. If you really knew the work that went behind it, it'd be more impressive. But that's scary to me. I don't know where that would go. As cool as it is, like merging people with technology in that way, because she's happy for this. She says, I like the idea of being merged with this self-replicating AI, she calls it. And that's in her bio on Twitter. She's like, she wants to be like the world's first self-replicating AI pop star. Which I love thinking about all that kind of stuff, but it does have real implications.
It's so Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Sorry, what I was going to say is like, what I'm starting to find scary about AI is that it's kind of what you were saying about Mr. Jam with the enchantment.
Oh yeah.
And how like even like as human beings we're being sort of demystified. Yeah. Like now we can, like, there'll be probably a day, well, if it depends how far we go, where like human beings, like a person can be summarized with code. Yeah. And that's scary to think that there's no more mystery. Like, that's you.
On a plate,
Yeah. It's like being, cut in half and shown your own heart, but like, it's not even in a language that you understand. It's, well, some people understand it, but a lot of us don't. Yeah. I just find that terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, from I think commercially, you can exploit that as much as you can, because replicating your own sound so that millions can sound like you is a bit crazy. But then I'm thinking, this would actually be good technology for someone who doesn't know how to speak and they need to communicate. As in for me, I think all these technologies, they have like, you know, a flip side, yeah. But I don't know, you just have to be a different kind of person to build such technologies and use them in the right way. And then there's the question of how much damage can we do? Yeah, because building such a technology, I think the person who was probably creating it was not for, you know, replicate my sound or something. It was just probably an assistive technology where, you know, I have my wheelchair and, you know, GPS, and, you know, I just need to communicate, give me something and all that. But then, you know, there's obviously different data sets. You tune it differently, you integrate it to your auto tune, and then it sounds like you. Yeah. And then you use it to make money, gain more followers and all that. So that's the cringe bit about it. But then I think it comes down to, okay, as a user of some of these technologies, what do I really, or as an inventor of some of this, what do I really want? And are there like you know, policies just to guide the use of it? And I think that's why recently they had this discussion on, guys, should we stop inventing and just use what we have and maybe build like a policy around how people are utilizing some of these technologies and all that. Yeah, so there's that flip side. There's the ethical conversations that obviously different cultures, different people, different contexts, and I think that's the unifying bit that's lacking on AI, because I mean some people in Africa somewhere, they may use it differently. Some people in the Western world, they may use it differently. Someone in, you know, the other side of the world will use it for different reasons. But then from a unification point of view, is it literally splitting us up, or is it unifying and bringing everyone together? So yeah,
I think we're verging a little on like Oppenheimer territory when we think about like how far can we take a technology, what responsibility do we give the creator of the technology versus the people using it. And I think going back to art, I mean, I've been listening and reading a lot of discussions, and there seems to be like a distinction between creator, maker, artist, and then genius, which is, I just threw it in there for the added like mysticism that we usually, I mean, I was wondering, actually, it was part of a question I wanted to ask Esther, which is, as someone who is creating a model, you are making, I mean, it is a creative process, but it doesn't get discussed as a creative process, even though, it is completely original, it is conceptual, it is sensorial. So I wanted to ask how you understand your own creative process as an engineer.
I mean, the world of engineering is also completely different. We have, I'd say, like, you know, there's the GitHub, there's Stack Overflow. If you're like a new, I call them artist. If you're a new artist and you're trying to build a couple of things, someone has already done it. They've encountered the errors, and you can easily go and get, you know, your process resolved as much as possible. But then, from a very creative point of view, you just have to understand your process. It's not appreciated because there's definitely a lot of thought that goes behind. If I'm putting up a network that is non-existent. Yeah, I will go through the process, labor as much as possible. Sometimes there's literally no data, and you have to look for ways to generate the data that you want. But then, if I put this on open source, then everyone will use the software in one way or the other, and then now you kind of like get lost in the history of, nobody even knows who you are. Yeah. So it's from a creative point of view, it's not like a flip where I can easily like write code and then create this application that's beautiful, and then people use it. But then it requires a lot of thought, a lot of study in the process. You even have to think about some of these algorithms and the kind of if you just open the folders from a backend, the kind of data structures you're building. How do I look at an image and bring it to life? Yeah. How do I ensure that it's within the bounds of something that can be reproducible, something that can be replicated by someone else, and they would probably take it further. So from an engineering point of view, I feel like there's so many creatives in that space, but they don't get the credit. They literally don't get the credit because obviously the space is crowded. So many people are probably trying out the same thing you're trying out, and it's like whoever gets there first, your product, someone will build on top of it, and by the time they even it's
it sounds like you need
technology.
You need like references in a way, like in your paper you put at the end all your list of references. It sounds like it needs something like that, and I don't think that would be too hard to do. You have maybe it would be if it from open source, if there was all people's work that had been contributed into that, if there was some sort of code embedded within the thing that they're taking from that links back like a tag to its creator.
Is that blockchain? Maybe.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's the whole. We're smart enough for the podcast. We've done it.
I'm at my place.
well, there we go. So NFTs and having ownership of that thing, it being written into the code that it's yours. Okay, but what if I screenshot it? Now I have it. I guess that is still the problem with that anyway. So even if it was the person at the bottom of the thing that had been built up, even if they were recognized, someone will just come into it and think, I'll just take that and do what I want with it. I think it's not been held to the same standard as like academia has been across years because it is so new, I guess, and that probably will come with time. But when you think like the way that you were describing it, it sounded as if like the more we learn from people in the past, and we make sure to credit them and recognize that they've lifted us up through everything, communities and whatever. I think that needs to happen. There needs to be that community side of that world, that tech world, instead of that sort of hunger for being the best, because the moment you are, like you said, you're overtaken. Now the next person is the best, or they've done the best thing with your work. So if you could, would you be able to share much more on blockchain? Like I have no idea how is it linked back to this first person NFTs? Like why is that? Why does it? Not why does it matter, but like why do people need like for that kind of art, where I guess it is kind of just against the statement that I just made, but maybe because the NFT thing with all the monkeys, it was just so
crazy.
Yeah, because at least for the money that they were charging for it is what made it completely like, oh, this is stupid. Like if you said, oh, £50 for this thing that I spent a day or two working on, and I have this whole whatever like collection that you could have for £50, like maybe it makes more sense. But all this money that they were charging to have your name attached to this, what is that? Why is that the thing that people are like upholding and not these other sources on open source? What is that?
I mean, blockchain. I love the technology of blockchain because I think in terms of the data structures are basically just this whole, from a coding point of view, where you store your data. You can store your data in a list, you can store it in like a dictionary and all that. So a dictionary, it only has two things. It has a key and a value. And this key, consider the way you use like a normal dictionary, the normal old dictionary, Oxford.
Yeah.
Just one word. Yeah, like the key is the unique bit, and then now the value, you can have as much information as possible, and that's why you'll have who is, what's an egg, and then there's A, B, C, all these definitions. Yeah. So blockchain is developed on the same concept, where the key is something known as hashable key, where once you build the first block, you hash it, and it gives you like a unique number that cannot be reproduced somewhere else.
Okay.
And then now you have to mine. You have to do like an operation known as mining to sort of like link to the next blockchain. Yeah. So consider yourself being in a blockchain where you're literally buying products from some farmer in Brazil, and you want to trace whether this farmer was paid rightfully or not. So they will place their price on the first block, and that block cannot be changed. The information cannot be accessed, cannot be changed, cannot be altered.
Okay.
That's the benefit of blockchain. And then now the second person who maybe buys that product to sell it in the UK sort of like has their own information, and there are like many bidders. You do your mining and you get the best bidder who has paid you, and you cannot change that information. So it goes like that until it gets to you, the end user. So as the end user, you would want to trace where your products are from. Have they been paid well? Has this artist been given, the right, I don't know, like copyrights, and have they been stored well, blah, 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 and all that. And you cannot alter that kind of information. If someone in the middle would want to change something, then you can see they tried altering. So there's no way you can ever interfere with this, and that's why blockchain is working on things like cryptocurrency. It's working on supply chain, and then it's also good for creatives, because now you can legally, I think, store your data in a very digitized way.
Yeah.
And then it can be applied across all things you want, and that's I think the new digital way of storing data and protecting also the users of in that pipeline. Yeah.
Wow.
So when you screenshot that now, what happens?
I mean, there's some for screenshots. If you do screenshots, sometimes nowadays, I think the person can see that. Yeah. And that's not even part of blockchain. That's just me setting my web-based data, or like my web, in such a way that if the user does a screenshot and the system will know what a screenshot is, just notify me and also notify them, especially if it's copyrights. That's not even part of the blockchain.
Okay.
Yeah, but for blockchain, you can easily use the technology in a way that no interference in between, no change of contract, no change of terms, and all that, depending on the kind of domain you're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, this seems perfect for art. This seems perfect for everything that we want, really.
Yeah, it's very good.
It makes me think of like the need for a kind of technological education and data education for like, people in schools, children who are going to grow up being chronically online, creatives. I mean, a proper training, because again, it's so easy to be like, oh, these things are not happening in the real world, when it is the real world, just on a different platform. So the dangers are very much real, and it feels abstract in the cloud and so on, when in fact the cloud is a fucking gigantic storage facility taking up very real space in the very real world.
Gosh.
So I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah.
It's like with data, I used to not care, like when they'd be like, oh, can you put cookies
Take
on
my
the laptop? I was
cookies.
like, take it anyway. And now I'm like, don't fucking talk to me. I don't want to hear about it. I'm like, don't, you're not coming near my data. Because like, every day I'm realizing how my data is very much a part of me. And by just giving it away for free, it's like, I heard this guy, he's like, he used to be in like Silicon Valley, and now he's like completely offline. And he was saying like, if the product is free, you're the product. And so now I'm just like, you can't touch me all my data. Like, no way. It's getting really real. I think what you said about learning is so important. Like, you need to get yourself, if you're not being educated, like, educate yourself, because
for sure.
it's getting harder and harder to ignore.
It is,
Okay, does that bring us to the end?
I feel like it does. It's been a very enlightening talk with you and you guys as well.
So much.
That was amazing.
We spoke about this so much. What began as a drunken hope has now been fulfilled. Thank you both as well.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yay!
This was amazing.
You've now reached the end of this episode. Thank you to Esther for joining us with all your blissful energy and immense knowledge. To Reese for embarking on this topic with your usual amazing range of references and perspectives. And to Tony for creating the space and the spark I didn't know I needed to believe that my ideas are worth giving life to. Having the chance to have this conversation together was a true gift, and it's such a pleasure to share it with the world. So thank you so much for listening, and we hope to meet you in the garden again very soon. Bye!